Okay, I think those two steps are done. So do you want to go ahead, Paul? Or did you
Yeah,
want to do something
sure, sure.
before?
I'll start, and then it will probably segue quite neatly into what Callie wants to talk about, actually. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we just released the new version of Istio that patched the HTTP rapid reset vulnerability, where the Envoy patches came out yesterday. So yeah, they just came out. I want to say thank you to Eric. I don't know if Lawrence is on the call. I know Keith is, for all the work they put into this. And I put some hours in, but really they were at it for such a long time. So thank you. So that is done now, which leads into kind of what Callie wanted to talk about and how we can try and make the communication better here. You want to go ahead, Callie?
Okay, yeah, sure. Just wanted to make sure you had nothing else.
Oh no, I've waffled enough.
Cool. So for the release process, I think like a lot of us can attest to how communication really broke down. And like I know this release was unusual because we had some people who were out, namely John, and also like the way that Envoy ended up releasing kind of like messed up those builds that we had created privately. But I think besides like the actual technical issues that went on with the release, I feel like besides Paul, who's like a member of the product security working group, I felt like as a release manager, I didn't have a lot of context as to what specifically was happening. And so like I didn't understand what steps were being taken. We did have like a private channel and we were discussing there, but then there were other discussions happening in the test and release channel. And so, and then like seeing PRs being created to like trigger build and publish that weren't coming from the people who I thought were driving the release was like very just confusing on my end. I personally was available and like more than willing to help. But it felt like I wasn't able to because I didn't have the full context of what was going on and things were moving really fast. And so I brought this up before with security related patches and releases, and kind of we've like basically it was like, oh yeah, we could communicate better, but like I think this keeps sort of being a pattern. And as a release manager, if I'm going to get questions from like people in the community or people elsewhere about what's going on, ideally I should be able to answer that. And then also like if things are happening in the branch and I need to approve them, then I also want to know what I'm approving and what's actually happening without feeling like I'm interrupting a process that's like already well underway. So, like to summarize, I think there needs to be a better form of communication or a better process that involves release managers regarding these security related patches from the start, as opposed to kind of pulling them in the middle or the end and just asking them to like approve PRs randomly because it's a little disorganized and yeah.
Is this the only issue with the security releases?
Yeah, everything else I feel really on top of things and like I understand what's going on. And there's been like really great communication with like the RMs and other people on the test and release teams for when we should do releases and everything like that. I feel like there's really good autonomy and ownership regarding that. But when it comes to, yeah, these security patches, it feels like all of that kind of goes out the window. And then without ownership, it becomes like difficult to do the work or really understand what's going on.
So my guess is they're not allowed to disclose details to you because you're not part of a member of the security working group. Is that your understanding too?
So that is true in terms of like the technical details, but we could still do a better job with communicating like the schedule dates and when we are doing things. I think one of the things that I've certainly struggled with as the person on the hook to lead this security release was understanding what to do when. So I've been working on a checklist which will live inside the product security working group drive for us to use next time. And for better or worse, next time won't be very far away, in about 3 weeks. So we'll work through that. So I will make some comments in it around what we need to communicate, and we can try and iterate on that. I think I'll probably share the checklist with Kalia and the release managers to help kind of get things added to it that would help them feel in the loop and understood, because there's nothing in there that would be confidential.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what, again, like I don't know what I don't know, right? But I know there was like, and historically there are private channels that the RMs are allowed to be in. But even then, like by the time those channels start, we don't really know what's going on. And I'm like, I accept that, you know, if I'm not in the PSWG, then I can't be privy to all of the information. But I think creating like clear expectations about like what my role is, how I can help, what my expectations are, will be a lot more helpful than like it's 4 p.m. at my day and then I'm like being roped into something but oh, like my day is ending, so then someone else has to cover for me, and like that just creates a lot of awkwardness that hopefully we can avoid in the future.
Yeah, the timing in the day is a bit it's going to be how it is because we're not often in control of the dates. So for instance, there'll be an embargo from say Envoy or Go or something else that will be whenever it's set. So
Yeah.
the times when stuff comes out are quite often out of our control. So I can't promise the time's going to be any better, but the communication definitely can be.
Yeah, exactly. Like the timing is fine. It's just that like I'm more than happy to do my part and work on it with all of you. It's just, yeah, if I like that is communicated a little more easily, then, you know, it'd be smoother for everyone.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So let's try again when we do this again later on in the quarter. I'll make some notes in the checklist and then we can iterate on that and go from there. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I thought Keith had his hand raised.
I did. I think I can go ahead and say it. I think that to Kalia's point, kind of seeing things from the product security side along with Paul, there with this particular CVE, like we knew this was coming for a little bit, and so I think that there's, again, even if we can't give detailed exploits or detailed information about how the exploit or how the vulnerability can be exploited and stuff like that, I think, or maybe we can't even give access to the patches. We can still say, okay, here's our plan of execution. Like on this date, this PR needs to be in this place, and this needs to be approved at this place. You can pre-approve them, put a do not merge label here. Like there are some logistical things I think we can do a better job about. Once we know that a security release is coming, as Paul mentioned, we typically do know when the embargo is going to be lifted, so we can work backwards and figure out when things need to be in place and communicate that way ahead of time to release managers so that they can plan their own work lives, personal lives, etc., and just know what availability is going to be, going to be there at that time.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Oh, sorry, Lynn.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, not as long as not disclose the detail, I think it's good. We probably need a process. Sounds like Paul is started working on the process to be a checklist for this product security team as they planning for security releases. They need to keep others they are going to ask to do in mind. What are the key dates and expectations for them?
Yeah, I'll add one thing, and I think part of this is we ran into a couple of issues yesterday that I hope we won't run into again. That's, I think, part of what Paul is trying to make sure is documented correctly. And And because we ended up doing that, we sort of ended up going down a path that's not normal. So there was a bunch of PRs, I think, that got created, and we're looking for RMs to approve, that typically wouldn't have happened in this space. So I think part of that, I want to say, I think part of the problem last night was, we ended up sort of falling through on a different path. And in this case, ended up picking up another CVE that also came out yesterday, as opposed to, doing two different CVEs, one yesterday, which was already built, and then another one, in the next week, trying to pick up the go changes. So, I want to say, I think that we ended up on a path that isn't normal, and I believe Paul is working to make sure that's documented better so we don't end up there again.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
Keith like really phrased it well. Like from an RM perspective, I don't really care what the security patch is about. All I care about is how we can work that into the release. And yeah, like that goes into saying like there is a private channel. I do have some heads up. But yeah, like all I care about as a release manager is process and making sure I'm doing what I need to do to support that. And also that I have the information where if someone is asking me about what's going on, I can answer it regarding process, not what the actual security issue or vulnerability is about. So as long as like we can achieve that from an RM perspective, I'm happy.
Yeah, and I don't know what was going on in the other channel. I knew what was going on in the test and release channel in that long thread, because I was there. I was not in the other channel. Obviously, you said it's private, so, or it was private.
Yeah. So Paul, maybe like also if you have time, we can like also hammer out like what because we do that for the release, right? We say what is communicated where. We can also do for this type of release.
Yeah, absolutely. That's literally, I've been sitting here making notes on whilst we've been talking to kind of make sure it's really clear to everyone, because we will change security release managers once a quarter. So we will keep making the same mistakes again and again if we don't write this down. So it pays to get the communication clear.
Cool. All right. That's I think I've communicated what I need to. So thanks.
All right. Don't know who's leading this, but it looks like Keith is on the list next.
Yeah, just wanted to make folks here aware of this design doc that was out there by blanking on his name. I think it's Steve Zhang from Intel, making some changes to, or proposing some changes to the Istio endpoint data structure and to support multiple addresses. So the idea that there's already a PR out stemming from this design doc, and I saw the PR and didn't know the doc existed, and so I want to make sure folks were aware of it. It's a pretty core change to the data model, where an endpoint can have more than one IP address, and it could have implications for even potentially at multiple interfaces, or if we want to support that in the future, or dual stack obviously is the other main blast radius of this. So I wanted to just put this on folks' radar. I left a couple of comments, but if you happen to be in the networking space and have opinions about how we model multiple addresses within Istio endpoints, then take a look at that doc.
Thank you, Keith. Did you say the primary reason to drive the change was for dual stack, or there's more to that? Also, is this related to ambient as well?
The primary reason is dual stack, yes. It is going to affect ambient just because it's going to change how Istio reasons about endpoints. As Costa mentioned, there are other use cases besides dual stack, beyond dual stack, but that's the primary motivator at this time. And yes, it will it will absolutely impact ambient. And the thing that pops in my mind is, okay, what are the bounds of this? How are you going to associate it? What gets more expensive? Just, there are some second and third order effects for this kind of change. So just want to make sure it gets the visibility that it needs.
I have the next topic. I came across the Istio roadmap that was created for 2020 to 2022. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of it, but when I came across it, I was really excited to see this format. And I'm curious why we moved away from this format for 2023. I am asking from an enhancement subgroup standpoint because being able to clearly see like the different features, the priorities for that feature, as well as like what are the stage for the feature and the plan for those features in the upcoming releases is very beneficial, especially if we want to see what areas we need help on or where we can contribute, as well as like what features are getting the priority of like up and out momentum in Istio. And I'm not aware of like why we didn't do it in 2023. So I'm hoping that anyone on this call that has any context can share. You can go ahead, Eric.
All right. Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of that document, I think this is probably something we can raise with Francis. I'm going to assume the document was probably last updated, and it was probably last talked about a lot with the prior person. And we can probably raise the issue with Francis to see if he wants to run with that or if somebody else should run with that. I'm trying to think back historically wise if that document was probably run more out of another set of meetings that we probably don't have anymore. I don't know if that was sort of like a work group lead meeting where the work group leads, worked on roadmaps and we presented roadmaps to the TOC. And that was pushed into there. I know we don't really have work groups presenting their individual roadmaps to the TOC anymore. So maybe that's what's sort of leading to the loss of this data.
Thanks for that information. And you mentioned the other person was running it. Who was that other person? Was it the person who was like facilitating these work group calls?
Yeah, and the name's on the tip of my tongue and I can't see it.
That's okay. So Francis might know because he is like he's responsible for moderating the work group call. Okay.
Yeah, he took over for her.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Shweta, I want to say, yes. Shweta was who was running the meetings and stuff before Francis.
And in those meetings, was this like this was brought up in each of those meetings where the conversation started from this doc?
I think we talked about this. I think we had the work group leads sort of work on this doc and we had status updates relative to the work items. And that's sort of what's missing, right? Like I said, what we used to do is I think the work group leads would basically have, their own roadmap documents that each work group had. So each work group had a list sort of what they were working on. And then those sort of got flushed out into this document. Or I should say more of this spreadsheet. And then we talked about status of those items, especially based on releases. And I think that is probably what's missing. I don't necessarily know the best way to get back to that, but I think Francis would probably be the best person to probably put that together. I mean, I can chat with Francis a little bit about what I think we did before and maybe help with that.
Yeah, that would be great. I can ping you and Francis offline to like follow up on if we want something like this still, and like what is the overhead to like bring it back into play.
Right. I mean, do we have to do all of the stuff that we did before, which would be, work group leads presenting a roadmap to the TOC, which took a lot of time. I mean, we would spend a lot of meetings going through roadmaps and talking roadmaps. If I remember right, that was sort of before my time on TOC, but I know that a lot of time was spent on that. But yeah, we can talk and see if there's something that would help. If that works, if they come up with something that, satisfies what you and the enhancement subgroup need.
Yeah. We don't want to just bring it back if there was friction. Just want to make it better.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to make a bunch of work for people that isn't beneficial.
Cool. Thank you, Eric.
And sorry, I wasn't taking notes for that part. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to discuss? Otherwise, we can get 30 minutes back. All right, sounds like not. So we will talk to everybody next week.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.